Testing. 1, 2. This is the Mr.Nobody podcast. This is the Mr.Nobody podcast. Kind of a jazzy episode. I don't mean to make a big thing out of jazz. Jazz is just Western music.
Classical music, really.
Put to rhythm. Put to rhythm. Put to rhythm. Put to rhythm. I guess these harmonies that you're listening to, these
Chord changes.
might come a bit quick compared to most classical music, but maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe not. This is episode 49. I can't believe I've made 49 of these.
It seems excessive.
So what do you want to talk about?
What shall we talk about today?
One thing that comes to mind is I play the guitar with my fingers. So I don't play like super fast. But it feels really nice to be touching
the guitar.
It's hard to explain. It's very sensual. The way a guitar feels, it smells. Once when I was 10 years old,
10yearsold.com.
I went on a trip to Spain because my mother was a Spanish teacher. And that year was my year to go.
Middle child.
My sister went, my brother went. And it was my turn. And she was going to be buying a guitar for my older sister. I just couldn't get my mind off of that. My parents were not especially advocating for music in any way.
They were both products of war.
It seemed like a frivolity. Something not serious. That's just how I read it.
While in Spain,
We were often confined. We were confined to this tour bus.
confined to a tour bus.
Something in me was yearning to get the fuck
Out of the tour bus. Onto some ground, some real estate.
and really feel the ground. The flat earth. I'll tell you this little story.
We were on the bus.
And the bus driver didn't speak any English, and he was super grouchy. And I had to use the bathroom. And he just kept waving it off like it was not a big deal to drive another 2 hours. But it was, and I had to go. And the bus was full of young girls who were older than I was. I wasn't going to be able to, relieve myself on the bus. So finally, after pleading with this guy and cursing in Spanish, he pulls over the bus onto the side of a highway, and there's nobody around. It's just yanking the bus over to the side, shouting at me, "Go!" And I ran out of the bus and down this little ravine, and all of a sudden the bus disappeared. It was over this embankment, and I was down in this gully
In a field of shriveled olive trees.
and I had a past life experience. Come on now. Having been confined to the bus and the hotels and the touring and all the stuff that a high school trip entails, we hadn't gone out into the country, into the land,
And it was calling.
and this was the first time I stood on Spain, ground that my ancestors had trod, Neanderthals too. And yeah, I went to the bathroom right there, but I was transported because Spain,
Where I was standing.
was kind of like this sandy desert. A little clumpier, a little thicker than that, but dry. A good environment for snakes. And I was in a fugue state. I was absolutely transfixed,
Transported.
enraptured, in love, and gone. Absolutely gone. I was finally there, feeling my ancestors returned, those who were unknown to me. But I somehow felt
Like I returned.
I could feel the connection. This is part of where I'm from.
The tree I fell from.
I could smell smells that I recognize, remember, colors that I knew.
That I recognized.
And I didn't know it, but the bus driver was honking the horn because he was pissed off. The bus disappeared,
Time stood still.
and I might have been taking longer than he expected. But there I was, for just a few brief moments, plugged back in. To an ancient connection. I scrambled up the hill, got back on the bus, and gave him my best fuck you look. And off we went. Truly a life-changing experience that made me feel life was worth living. I could detect that there was more to reality
Then met the eye.
that just being the offspring of immigrants and being replanted in a new country, a new continent, did not disconnect me. It only obscured the connection. So the next experience has to do with the guitar. As I said, my mother was going to buy a guitar
For my sister.
for my sister.
For my sister. For my sister. For my sister.
And I couldn't even verbalize it, how profoundly insulting that was to me. Because it felt like the guitar was something that I knew belonged in my hands.
On my lap.
In my hands.
In my hands.
As though the guitar was already part of my history before I even knew what one was.
And so we went to
A workshop and store of a guitar maker.
an old world experience.
Down these tiny streets that only a horse could fit its body through as it galloped. And down this tiny street, I remember there were these little Coca-Cola freezers that you opened up from the top and got these tiny little Coca-Cola bottles from the top.
Like an honor system.
And we walked up this little miniature street and opened a door to the guitar shop. And as the door flew open,
The door to the guitar shop.
something incredible happened. A portal. I entered into a new dimension, or a dimension, a connection that was inside of me,
A portal.
because I was flooded, not with the sight of the 50 beautiful handmade guitars that were hanging in a row. But it was the smell. The smell of the cedar, the spruce, the ebony, hard. I was overwhelmed, and I knew I had been there before,
That I have lived.
not this exact space, but in a space like this, just like this, and I couldn't move. My mother asked me,
What's wrong with you?
I couldn't even speak. I was only 10, and I was having a straight up past life experience. There was no question. I knew that I had lived before,
Freaky, but cool.
and that I had smelled and seen this before, suffered, and died. And there was also some darker feelings. I felt cheated out of this life again.
I recognized the swords.
There were no guitar makers. It wasn't part of my culture in my new country. And I felt that I had been stolen and taken away. And made to forget. who I was, what I was, who 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 I was. I don't think I recovered until I left the guitar shop, and my mother made a deal on a guitar that was in a bag. It wasn't even in a case, it was just in a bag. She's a haggler. So she probably said, no, I'll just put it in a bag, save myself $50.
A bag filled with a sacred object.
And I took every opportunity I could to just touch that guitar. Just place my hands on the neck and feel the strings articulating like braille under my palm. My sister was very protective of this instrument, and when we got back to the United States of America,
Fuck yeah.
and in the ensuing months, I admit sometimes I snuck into her room and I pulled the guitar from under her bed. Now it was in a case, and I wouldn't even pick it up. I just strummed the strings one at a time. She could hear that from down the hall. And she would scream and fucking chase me down and punch me right in my back.
Seemed a little excessive.
She barely played that guitar. The neck was very wide, like an ocean, like an ocean. Didn't suit her somehow. But it was hers. And I was an obscene interloper, something that if I touched that instrument, I sullied it. She could sense my lust.
I knew that the guitar and I had a future together.
Some business, some business, some business. Such a beautiful thing. I taught my son how to play, how to think around it, the fretboard,
The matrix.
to discover the proportions and find his own geometry. Every body is different. He had the most beautiful hands, a little smaller than mine.
Perfect for the guitar.
But they knew how to play the guitar, how to move. They were shaped like the hand that plays the guitar. And I taught him to play with his fingers because that's what I did.
Father to son.
And it's a real commitment to do that. It's not a small thing. And there's not many people I've met who play rock and jazz who do it with their fingers. No plectrum. Not exclusively. There's been great guitar players who have done that. Wes and Joe. They come to mind. And of course, a phalanx,
A cadre.
an army of brilliant flamenco and classical players. But I wanted to live in time, not not just recite songs or pieces of music. I see the value in that. It's just you have to choose a path. Pick a poison. 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 Or you get nowhere.
I chose Western harmony.
If you try for everything and every kind of music, and at least for me, it didn't work out where I would progress chasing idioms.
All of which I love.
I suppose I'm a generalist, but nevertheless, I had to focus.
I had to choose.
Or I would never get anywhere. Sometimes there's freedom.
In restriction.
I had to choose, or I wouldn't get anywhere. To choose a destiny.
Still a broad choice.
It's nothing short of a complete destiny. And I taught my son the same thing.
Choose a path you love.
Here's a little jazz poem. I smelled the best noses of my demographic laid asunder by clarity, clawing through the lonely yards of marginalized homeowners. At noon, looking for a happy bag of weed. God-penist pranksters, awash with modern hell-like disconnection to the darkness in the natural hue of daytime. Who, wealth and cohesion and bug-eared, standing low, sucking in normal daylight of hot coffee high-rises, stinking through the bottom of little towns thinking about doodads. Who hid their minds from the devil and Brahma and saw the prophets' bad guys dancing around the country kitchens with the floors darkened. Who stopped in centers of ignorance, hands lucidly and Montesquieu-like, watching the idiots' peace march, who were invited to the cave for intelligent erasing of books. Moral ditties on the trapdoor of my belly, who stood outside fully dressed, cool in their poverty, with or without their desk drawers, and blind to the pleasure kneeling in front of them. Out of jail, in their clean-shaven intestines for the first time, through Toronto with bolo ties jammed with linguine from Quebec, spitting water into musical tents and vomiting sand on the mountain, with purgatory up their asses full of pleasant dreams, grape juice and pussy, in an endless cycle of insane children. Thanks for indulging me.
I had to
Find a control inside myself that was not easy. I lost my temper a few times teaching my son. I lost my temper. Because kids are kids.
and that was a different kind of relationship.
I remember sitting close to him with a pencil, pointing at each note as we played through a piece of music.
Treating him like my other students.
And I would say, good, that sounds good.
That sounds good. That sounds good. Yes.
Try that, I like that. Not criticize, that sounds good.
That sounds good.
But encourage him, the guitar, to think. Father, to ride the instrument like a horse, my son.
Caballo.
That his knowledge and his connection
He did teach me.
was that of a master, just buried ever so slightly under the layer of a child. I lost my temper.
I lost my temper. I lost my temper. I lost my temper.
His hands are the last thing I remember seeing of his body. They still looked alive. Nobody. Out.